My screen froze on the Instagram notification. My sister's wedding photos tagged with number Monroe Wedding and number Perfect Day. The image burned into my vision. My parents beaming, cousins I hadn't seen in years raising champagne glasses, and my sister radiant in white. The invitation they swore they sent never arrived. The text message I received instead still sat in my phone. "We figured you wouldn't want to come. You know how you are at family events." My coffee turned bitter in my mouth as I scrolled through 17 pictures. In the family portrait, someone who looked vaguely like me, my cousin Tara, stood where I should have been. Under the photo, the Monroe family celebrates Vanessa's special day. They had literally replaced me, not just excluded me, erased me. My name is Natalie. I'm 32 and a graphic designer. This is the story of how I stopped being the daughter they forgot and became the truth they couldn't ignore. I'd known something was wrong months before when Mom called about Vanessa's engagement, but never asked about my boyfriend Richard, the man I'd been with for 3 years, the man whose ring I was already wearing by then. I mentioned him twice during that call. Mom changed the subject both times. It was the same pattern that had followed me since childhood. Vanessa shined. I existed in her shadow. "Just don't make a scene at the wedding," Mom had said before hanging up. "You know how Vanessa gets when the attention isn't on her." The irony was breathtaking. There would be no scene because there would be no invitation. When the wedding weekend arrived, my Instagram filled with location tags from my hometown. Cousins posting, "Heading to the Monroe wedding." My phone remained silent except for work emails. I watched the ceremony unfold through social media stories, each notification like a small cut. Even though I had muted my family's accounts months ago, our extended family and mutual friends posts still appeared in my feed, making it impossible to escape the constant reminders. My father's speech, tagged with "Best father of the bride ever," made my hands shake so badly I dropped my phone. Richard found me on the bathroom floor that night, scrolling through photos of the family I apparently didn't belong to. "Let's get married," he said simply. "Next weekend. Just us." We did. A courthouse ceremony with 2 witnesses we found in the hallway. No white dress, no fancy venue, just papers signed and a single photo taken by a security guard. When Richard kissed me, I felt something unlock. I mailed the photo to my parents with no note. 3 weeks passed. No response. So when Mom called 2 months later about attending Vanessa's first post-wedding family dinner, I accepted with a calm I didn't recognize. "When will it be your turn?" she asked as we sat around the perfectly set dining table, wine glasses catching the light. I smiled, took a slow sip of my Cabernet, and said, "It already happened. You just weren't there." The room froze. Forks paused midway to mouths. My sister's face contorted like she'd bitten into something sour. "You're joking," she said, her voice higher than normal. I set my glass down carefully. "No." Mom's face drained of color. "When?" she whispered. 6 weeks ago, I said. "A courthouse, just us. No drama." Her face crumpled, shock rippling through her features. "You didn't tell us." "No," I confirmed, "because you were too busy planning her perfect day. You didn't even ask if I was seeing anyone." They hadn't. Not once in 3 years. When I got engaged, I kept it private. Not out of shame, but self-protection. Protection from the comparisons, the judgment, the subtle ways they made me feel like an afterthought in my own family narrative. So we eloped. Just me, Richard, and a November sky the color of faded denim. No venue drama, no seating charts, no tears from my mother about how my dress wasn't traditional enough. I had mailed that single photo afterward, me in my blue dress, laughing, genuinely happy. No one responded. So tonight I gave them the truth. Raw, clean, final. My sister looked away. Mom swallowed her wine like medicine. And Dad, he finally asked something real. "Is he good to you?" I nodded. "Yes, better than you were." After dinner, the silence wore off. Mom did what she always did when control slipped away. She tried to reframe the narrative. "You should have told us," she said with that rehearsed tremble in her voice. "As your mother, I had a right to be there." I raised my eyebrows. All right, I turned to my sister. You didn't think I had a right to be at yours. Remember? Because I hadn't forgotten the supposedly lost invitation, the day of text that said, "We assumed you'd be too busy with work." But I hadn't been busy. I'd sat in my apartment watching their celebration flood social media like confetti, my sister's smile, mom's tears, dad's toast. All while I scrolled, heart hammering against my ribs, realizing they never wanted me there. Not really. I was the background sister, the one who didn't need rescuing, the one who made unconventional choices and didn't follow tradition. So I created my own. My wedding was small. No matching bridesmaids, no tiered cake, just vows spoken in a room with fluorescent lighting, our hands clasped together, our eyes locked in defiance of everyone who said love only matters when it's documented on Instagram. Dad sighed heavily at the table. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. I almost believed the softness in his voice until I remembered his toast at Vanessa's wedding, captured perfectly in high definition. "We're so proud to finally have a daughter doing things the right way." I looked him directly in the eye. "You didn't ask. No one did. You only see me when I reflect your perfect family image." And across the table, for the first time in my life, I saw my sister's smile fade completely. Vanessa finally spoke. "I didn't think you'd want to come to my wedding," she said, eyes flicking down to her plate. "You always make everything about you." That was rich coming from the woman who demanded 5 dress fittings and cried when the florist brought peonies 1 shade darker than she'd specified. "Not inviting someone and justifying it afterward doesn't make it right," I said evenly. "It makes it premeditated." She flinched. So did Mom. Dad picked up his fork like it might shield him. I continued, not to wound, but to witness. I was never going to be the sister who looked good in bridesmaid photos, or the one who made your love story look bigger by standing quietly beside you. "That's not fair," Vanessa whispered. "Neither was watching your wedding unfold on Instagram while I sat home wondering what I'd done wrong." Her lower lip trembled, but I didn't soften because the problem wasn't just the wedding. It was years of revisionist history, years of being labeled difficult for speaking up, years of being told I was too intense, too independent, too much, and yet somehow not enough to be included. Mom jumped in, hands fluttering like trapped birds. "Well, it's over now. Maybe we can move forward." I shook my head. "See, that's the thing. I already did. Without you." Her face dropped like a chandelier severed from its chain. I stood up, napkin folded neatly beside my barely touched dessert. I didn't come here to explode. I came here to set the record straight. I looked at my sister. "You got the wedding you wanted?" I looked at my parents. "You got the daughter you celebrated." Then I smiled genuinely. "And I got the peace none of you ever offered." With that, I walked out, leaving behind the only seat I'd ever truly been assigned at that table, the empty one. 3 days passed before anyone contacted me. Not a call, not a text, just silence. Cold and calculated. Then, on a Wednesday night, Mom emailed, "You blindsided us. Your sister is heartbroken. There was no need for that scene." No need. I stared at the screen like it might blink and correct itself. That scene was me finally speaking one truth at one dinner table after decades of swallowing everything else. I didn't reply, but they weren't finished. Vanessa posted a throwback on Instagram, a photo from her wedding day captioned, "Some people watch, some people vanish. Real love shows up." The comments were predictable. Friends validating her, distant cousins chiming in with heart emojis, a parade of digital loyalty. I didn't flinch because they could spin the story however they wanted. I had already lived it. Meanwhile, Richard was folding laundry when I told him about the post. He didn't ask for details, just walked over, kissed my forehead, and said, "Do they even know your favorite flower?" They didn't. He did. Anemones. He planted them outside our apartment 2 months before we got married. Said, "Now your name has roots." My family never asked why we eloped. Never noticed how my voice changed once I stopped performing daughterhood like it was an unpaid internship. I went on with my life until another email arrived, this time from Dad. Just 5 words. "Can we talk?" Just us. I hovered over it because sometimes the ones who stay silent after your truth erupts are the ones who finally heard it echo, and sometimes they're just hoping to pull you back in gently before you realize you're free. I took a deep breath and typed, "We'll see." Dad picked a diner. Neutral ground, the same one we used to visit after my debate tournaments in high school. He was already seated when I arrived, hands folded, coffee half gone. For a second, I saw the Dad I remembered. Steady, quiet, impossible to read. "I'm not here to take sides," he said immediately. I raised an eyebrow. "You already have." He nodded slowly. "I know." The silence stretched between us like taffy pulled too thin. Then he said, "You getting married without telling us?" It hurt. I didn't flinch. "You not asking where I was the day of her wedding?" That hurt too. He looked down, thumb tracing the rim of his cup. "I didn't realize how bad things had gotten," he said, "between you and your mother. You and your sister." I let that sit. Dad, it didn't get anywhere. It stayed exactly where it always was. Unequal. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and slid a photo across the table. Me and Richard smiling, wind-blown, my blue dress caught mid-twirl. "I kept this," he said, "even when your mother said it was disrespectful." I stared at the photo. My hands had been shaking when I sent it. One last attempt. One final olive branch. "I didn't know how to reach you," he added, "not without her listening." I leaned back. "Then maybe don't reach for me until you're willing to speak at full volume around her." His eyes softened. "I miss you." I folded the photo and tucked it into my purse. "I'm not lost, Dad. I just stopped walking in your direction." He nodded again. No defense, no pleading. And maybe, finally, he understood. I hadn't left the family. I just stopped waiting for them to meet me halfway. 2 days after the diner, Mom showed up at my door unannounced. She didn't even knock, just waited in her Lexus like a lawyer preparing closing arguments, sunglasses on, jaw set like granite. Dad must have told her where I lived now, though he never mentioned he planned to share my address. I opened the door slowly. She stepped out, arms crossed, designer purse clutched like armor. "I suppose your father told you I'm the villain now," she said without preamble. I didn't answer because villains don't always wear black. Sometimes they wear pearls and speak in sighs instead of slurs. "I raised you better than this," she said. "Did you?" I replied calmly. She exhaled sharply. "You embarrassed us. You humiliated your sister." "No," I said. "I answered your question. You asked when it would be my turn. I told you." And that scene at dinner was honesty. I cut in. The silence swelled between us, a war without noise. Then she stepped closer. "You've always needed too much," she whispered. "Too much validation, too much space." I felt that line hit where it was meant to, but this time it didn't land because she didn't know. I'd already unpacked that wound with Richard in therapy, in the stillness of a marriage she'd never asked about. I looked at her the way you look at a painting you once thought was priceless, but now see for what it really is, technique without soul. "You didn't lose a daughter," I said. "You just lost the version you could control." She blinked rapidly. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said. "I think I'm just done performing for applause you never gave me." She didn't cry. She turned, walked back to her car, engine started. No wave, just taillights fading down the street. And I closed the door without guilt, because not every ending needs a slam. Some just need silence and a lock turning. A week later, the wedding album arrived. Not mine, Vanessa's. A thick cream-colored envelope with gold embossing and the Monroe family crest stamped in the corner. No note, just the album sent to me like a peace offering or a provocation. Richard watched me open it at the kitchen counter. "Sure you want to do this?" he asked gently. I nodded. Sometimes closure isn't about what you want to see, but what you're finally ready to face. The first few pages were predictable. Dress fittings, champagne flutes, Dad walking Vanessa down the aisle. Then came the reception. Mom mid-toast, eyes glassy with pride, a long scripted quote about daughters, dreams, and destiny. Then one image made me freeze. A family portrait. Everyone lined up, smiling, poised, and there it was. My name written under the photo, except the body standing there wasn't me. It was my cousin from Boston. Same height, same dark hair, wearing a dress suspiciously similar to one I'd worn to my college graduation. They had passed her off as me. Framed it, labeled it, posted it online as if presents could be faked, as if truth was just a caption away from revision. Richard stood behind me, jaw tight. "They replaced you," he said quietly, "in pictures." "No," I whispered. "They erased me and didn't think I'd notice." I slid the album back in the envelope. Didn't tear it. Didn't scream. I simply wrote one word across the front in permanent marker: return. Dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. No note inside, no explanation. Because when someone deletes you from the frame of their perfect story, you stop being the background and start being the author of your own. They never responded. Not to the returned album, not to the message written across the envelope, not to the unspoken truth inside it. And that silence? It didn't ache. It clarified. I stopped waiting for the apology that would never come, the revision that would never be printed. Instead, I started building something new. Richard and I found a little venue by the lake. Nothing fancy, just a wide porch, string lights, and space for 30 chairs. We called it a celebration of honesty. Not a second wedding, not a do-over, just a gathering of people who actually showed up. 3 months after returning the wedding album, we held our celebration at Silver Lake Lodge, just 20 minutes outside the city. Old friends, co-workers, 2 neighbors who brought homemade pie. No seating chart, no expectations, no relatives needing emotional hand-holding. And when I stood in front of those 30 souls and read our vows again, but this time aloud, I didn't cry. I breathed. Because healing isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's just honoring what was real in front of those who never made you earn love like a prize. Afterwards, someone asked if my family was coming. I smiled gently. No, they already attended a wedding, just not mine. That night, back at home, I took the last box down from the closet. Old cards, framed quotes from Mom, a bridesmaid dress I'd bought years ago for a wedding I was later uninvited from. I placed it all in a bag, not with rage, but with relief, and dropped it off at the donation center on Oak Street. A girl in line behind me said, "That's a really pretty dress." I turned and smiled. It was never really mine. And as I walked away, lighter than I'd felt in years, I realized family isn't who shares your name. It's who never has to ask twice where you were when it mattered. It's been a year now since our celebration by the lake. Mom still sends the occasional text on holidays, brief and formal. Dad calls every few months, our conversations growing slightly longer each time. Vanessa and I haven't spoken directly since that dinner, though I heard through Dad that she finalized her divorce 3 months ago. Some family ties stretch thin without breaking completely, while others snap clean. I've made peace with both outcomes. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.